She spent the entire dinner tearing me down to impress her lover, never realizing I was silent because I was busy signing his death warrant. As she laughed at my failed career, I watched the clock hit 8 p.m., the exact second I became his boss and his new nightmare. My name is Juan Walker, and the most dangerous thing I ever did was let them think I was finished. The restaurant was called Alder and Stone, $40 bread, crystal stemware, the kind of place where people come to be seen, where the lighting is low enough to hide a lie, but bright enough to expose one. I had made the reservation myself, table for two, our 22nd anniversary. But Elizabeth didn't come alone. She walked in wearing that red dress, the one I'd bought her in Florence 4 years ago, before things went cold, before the excuses started, before I began finding receipts I'd never approved and calendar gaps I'd never questioned. She walked in wearing my past, on the arm of Louis Rosario. Louis Rosario, founder and CEO of Rosario Global Innovations, the man whose face appeared on the cover of 3 financial magazines in the last 18 months, the man my wife called her business mentor, the man who, somewhere between mentoring sessions, had apparently become something else entirely. He was tall, impeccably dressed, the kind of man who had learned long ago that the world moves aside for people who look like they expect it to.
He pulled out her chair. She let him. I said nothing. I simply picked up the menu. Elizabeth ordered the salmon. Louis ordered for himself, and then, without looking at me, recommended I try the chicken. "It's simple," he said, "straightforward." He smiled at her when he said it. She laughed. That was the first insult. It would not be the last. By the time the appetizers arrived, Elizabeth had shifted the conversation to my work. She did it carefully at first, the way people do when they want to wound you but maintain the appearance of concern. "Juan's been consulting," she told Louis, with that particular softness that meant the opposite of soft, "independently, for a while now." Louis nodded slowly, swirling his wine. "How's that going?" "Steady," I said. Elizabeth touched her napkin. "He means slow." "It's been slow, Juan. You can say it." I looked at her. I didn't answer. "You know," Louis leaned forward, and I saw it in his posture, that practiced generosity of a man who enjoys giving people things they never asked for. "I actually have an opening. Mid-tier operations, solid position, comfortable salary." He tilted his head. "Might be worth a conversation for someone at your stage." Mid-tier, comfortable, stage. 3 words designed to diminish me in front of my wife, delivered with a smile so smooth it almost felt like a favor. Elizabeth didn't correct him. She looked at her salmon. Under the table, my phone pulsed once. I didn't look down. I didn't need to. I already knew what it meant. My attorney, Clarence Griffin, had been sending status updates every 15 minutes since 6 o'clock. The acquisition was moving. The threshold was climbing.
I reached for my water glass, took a sip, set it down. "That's generous of you, Louis," I said. "I'll keep it in mind." He nodded, satisfied, already moving on, already done with me. Elizabeth finally looked up. There was something in her eyes, not quite guilt, not quite relief, like she'd been hoping I would fold quietly, like she needed to see it, needed to watch me accept a lesser version of myself so that whatever she was doing with this man could feel justified. She had no idea. None of them did. And somewhere across the city, in a server room that neither Louis nor Elizabeth had ever seen, a transaction was completing, quietly, irreversibly. The clock on my phone read 7:58 p.m. I had 2 minutes. Let me take you back. Not to that restaurant, not to that table, not to the moment Louis Rosario looked at me like I was something he could afford to dismiss. Take you back further. 8 months earlier, a Tuesday, 2:17 in the morning. I was sitting at my desk in the study, the room Elizabeth never entered because she said it smelled like old ambition. My laptop screen was the only light in the house. Spreadsheets, shell company filings, a 6-month acquisition.
Clarence is not the kind of man you call when you need comfort. He is the kind of man you call when you need something done, and you need no one to know it was you who did it. I called Clarence the night I found the hotel receipt. I want you to understand something. I did not move quickly. I did not react. I did not confront Elizabeth with the receipt in my hand and demand answers in the kitchen like a man who has already lost. That is what they expected. That is what men do when they are afraid. I was not afraid. I was calculating. The first thing I did was listen, quietly, patiently. I let Elizabeth believe our life was continuing as normal. I let Louis Rosario believe he was untouchable. I attended his industry events. I shook his hand at 2 separate charity galas. I smiled at the right moments. The whole time, I was reading his company from the inside out. What I found, buried under 14 months of strategic acquisitions and a glittering public reputation, was rot. Rosario Global Innovations was not the fortress it appeared. Louis had overextended across 3 markets simultaneously. His Series D investors were getting nervous. 2 of his board members, Michael Descano and Leslie Gurley, had been quietly shopping for a reason to restructure his executive seat. They didn't need much convincing. They just needed the right buyer to make the first move. That's where my offshore accounts came in. Accounts that Elizabeth didn't know existed. Accounts I had spent 11 years building through consulting work she called slow and steady. Work she had dismissed at dinner tables exactly like the one we sat at tonight. I had never corrected her, not once. Because the man who was underestimated is the most dangerous man in any room.
Clarence structured the acquisition through 3 layers of holding entities. Every transaction was clean, every signature was legal, every move was timed to land on a single night, a night I chose specifically because Louis Rosario would be sitting across a dinner table from me, too comfortable, too arrogant, too certain of his own permanence to feel the ground shifting beneath him. I chose our anniversary on purpose. I want you to sit with that. I chose the date. I chose the restaurant. I chose to watch him pull out her chair and recommend me the simple dish and offer me a mid-tier position in his own company, a company that by the time dessert arrived would no longer belong to him. Every word he said tonight landed on a man who already owned him. He just didn't know it yet. And somewhere between his 3rd glass of wine and another joke at my expense, the clock was about to hit 0. The dessert menus arrived at 7:59 p.m. Louis didn't look at his. He was too busy performing, leaning back in his chair with the particular ease of a man who had never once considered that comfort could be a liability. He was telling Elizabeth about a development deal in Singapore, something about square footage, something about his vision. His hands moved when he talked. They always did. Elizabeth was laughing at the right moments. I was watching the clock. 7:59. The waiter refilled my water glass. I thanked him by name. He was a young man, couldn't have been more than 24, 25. He had no idea he was standing at the center of something historic. Most people never do. Lewis had shifted to a new subject. He was describing with great satisfaction a competing firm he had recently absorbed, a smaller company, family-owned. He used the word clean to describe the acquisition, the way a surgeon might use it, clinically, without sentiment. He used the word eliminated. He looked at me when he said it. Elizabeth smiled into her wine glass. I set down my fork. Not out of anger. There was no anger left in me by then. I had burned through it all in that study at 2 a.m. months ago. Spreadsheets open, the hotel receipt photographed and filed and forwarded to Clarence in a single cold email. What remained in its place was something quieter, something with better aim.
"That's an interesting philosophy," I said. Louis tilted his head. "It's just business, Juan." "It is," I agreed. "It really is." 7:59 p.m. My phone vibrated once. A single pulse. The kind Clarence and I had agreed on 11 weeks ago. Not a call, not a message, just a signal. One vibration meant the threshold had been crossed. One vibration meant the majority stake had cleared. One vibration meant that as of this moment, the holding company registered to Canoga Acquisitions Limited, a company whose ultimate beneficial owner was one Juan A. Walker, now controlled 51.4% of Rosario Global Innovations. One vibration meant it was over. It had been over for 4 seconds before Louis Rosario finished his sentence. I did not look down at my phone. I did not change my expression. I reached for my water glass, took a slow sip, and placed it back on the white linen with the same patience I had carried for 8 months. Then Louis's phone rang. Not a buzz, a full ring, loud enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. Louis frowned, the instinctive frown of a powerful man interrupted, and looked at the screen. His face changed. Not dramatically, not all at once. It was subtle, the way color drains from something before it fully goes cold. The slight stiffening around his jaw, the way his eyes moved too quickly across the caller ID, then back up, then back down again.
He excused himself. "One moment," he said to Elizabeth, already pushing back his chair. "Board matter." Elizabeth watched him go with a soft expression, that particular look she reserved for men she admired. Then she turned to me with the residue of it still on her face, and for just a moment, before she remembered who she was looking at, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not guilt, not yet. Something more instinctive than that. Recognition. Like some part of her, the part that had lived with me for 22 years, the part that knew how I sat when I was thinking, the part that understood my stillness better than anyone, that part was picking up a frequency she could not name. "He's very driven," she said, about Louis, filling the silence. I said, "He was." She blinked. "What?" I said nothing. I simply reached into the interior pocket of my jacket, slowly, without theater, and placed a single business card face down on the white tablecloth beside the breadbasket. Then I folded my hands and waited. Across the room, Louis Rosario's voice had dropped to almost nothing. His shoulders had risen toward his ears, the hand at his collar was gripping now. Elizabeth hadn't looked away from the card. She hadn't touched it yet, but the moment she turned it over, everything she thought she knew about this dinner, this man, this life she had quietly been dismantling, was going to collapse. All of it. at once. Elizabeth turned the card over. She read it once, then again. Her lips didn't move, but I watched her eyes track the words a third time, slowly, the way you reread something when your brain refuses to accept what it's already understood. The card read, Juan A. Walker, Chairman, Canoga Acquisitions, Ltd., Parent Company, Rosario Global Innovations. She looked up at me. I looked back. I did not smile. I did not explain. I simply held her gaze with the same patience I had held for 8 months, the same patience she had mistaken every single day for passivity. Juan, Lewis should be wrapping up that call, I said, any moment now. He came back to the table 40 seconds later. He did not sit down. He stood at the edge of his chair with his phone still in his hand, looking at me with an expression I recognized immediately, not because I had seen it on his face before, but because I had spent 8 months building towards it. It was the expression of a man who has just been told a name, a specific name, the name behind a holding company he never bothered to investigate because he never imagined the man across the dinner table from him was capable of being anything more than an obstacle. Canoga Acquisitions, he said. His voice was controlled, barely. Yes, I said. That's your company? It is. Elizabeth's hand was still on the business card. Her fingers had gone white at the tips. What is happening? She asked, not to Louis, to me. And in her voice, under the composure, under 22 years of practiced certainty, I heard the first real crack. Louis pulled out his chair and sat down hard. You need to tell me, he said, leaning forward, exactly what you've done. I bought your company, Louis, 51.4%, cleared at 8 o'clock this evening. Your board confirmed the transfer to Clarence Griffin's office 14 minutes ago. I glanced at my watch. Michael Viscano seconded the resolution. Leslie Gurley signed off at 7:58. That's not... He stopped, started again. That deal was under a blind entity. There's no way you... There's always a way, I said. You just have to be patient enough to find it. The table next to us had gone quiet. A woman in a gray blazer was no longer pretending to study her menu. A couple near the window had stopped mid-conversation. The waiter who had refilled my water, the young one, 24, 25, stood frozen near the service station, a linen cloth in his hand, not moving. Restaurants are intimate spaces. Sound travels. Louis, I kept my voice level. Effective as of 8 o'clock tonight, your executive authority at Rosario Global has been suspended pending board restructure. Your access credentials were revoked 17 minutes ago. Security will have cleared your office by morning. He stared at me. You're terminated, I said. Not shouted, not performed, just stated, the way you close a door that was always going to close. Elizabeth made a sound I had never heard from her before, something between a word and an exhale. Her hand knocked her wine glass. It didn't fall, but the red wine inside tilted to the very edge, trembling before settling back. She opened her mouth. Juan, listen to me. I am listening, I said. Then I reached into my jacket and placed the second envelope on the table. The envelope sat on the table between us. Elizabeth stared at it the way people stare at something they already know is going to hurt them, wanting to look away, unable to. She didn't touch it, not yet. Louis hadn't moved. He was still in his chair, phone face down on the linen, both hands flat on the table, like a man trying to feel whether the floor beneath him was still solid. The restaurant noise continued around us, soft piano, the low music of other people's evenings. But at our table, everything had gone to a frequency below sound. "Elizabeth," I said quietly, "open it." She reached for the envelope with fingers that weren't quite steady, pulled the flap, drew out the document slowly, the way you handle something you already know is final. Her eyes moved down the first page. She had expected the divorce papers. She had not expected to see that they were dated 7 months ago. 7 months. While she was building a life with Louis in the margins of their marriage, Juan had already drawn a clean line through it. He had not reacted, he had not confronted, he had not begged. He had simply made his plans and waited for the right evening. The full weight of that, the patience of it, the precision of it, settled over her face like something permanent.
"Juan," her voice caught on the single syllable of my name in a way it hadn't in years, maybe longer. I never thought you would." "I know," I said. That was all. Because she wasn't saying she was sorry for what she'd done. She was saying she was sorry she had miscalculated. And there is a profound difference between those two things, one that she would have to sit with long after this evening ended. I looked at Louis. He was not the man who had walked into Alder & Stone 2 hours earlier. That man had been constructed carefully. The posture, the ease, the practiced authority of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. That construction had come apart piece by piece since the phone call, and what remained was just a man in an expensive suit who had overreached and been caught so cleanly he couldn't even find the seam. He didn't speak. He didn't have anything left that would hold. I stood. No theater, no final speech, no moment held longer than it needed to be. I buttoned my jacket. I picked up my phone from the table. I looked at the room, the soft light of Alder & Stone. The other diners returned now to their own evenings. The young waiter near the service station who gave me the smallest of nods as I stepped back from my chair. I did not look at Elizabeth again. Not because I hated her. That feeling had burned clean months ago, in the study at 2 a.m., with the receipts and the spreadsheets and the long, quiet work of becoming someone she had never taken seriously enough to fear. I walked toward the door alone.
The city was waiting outside, still and wide, the night air carrying the faint smell of rain on warm pavement, the skyline holding its light against the dark in that particular way that always made me feel like something was beginning. And for the first time in longer than I could name, I believed it. Not because I had taken something from Louis Rosario, not because I had left Elizabeth with nothing to negotiate, not because I had won the evening or the company or the argument, but because somewhere between the hotel receipt and the hostile takeover and the single vibration of a phone at 8 p.m., I had stopped waiting for someone else to confirm my worth. I no longer needed to prove anything.